All right, I will call this April 4th, 2023 Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Kate Thomas,
Here.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Jamie Clapham,
Here.
Jim Hansen,
Present.
Michael Berkland,
Here.
and Clay Klum is absent with notice.
Okay, before I ask for a motion to approve the proposed agenda, I am going to give the attendees an opportunity to raise their hand in order to get the amount that we're going to need. So I know what time we're going to need. Thanks for being patient. Some people might not be able to find their hand. Okay, we won't take any more hands after this. It says we have 15. So I am going to limit the time. I'm going to keep it at a half hour. Well, let me see. No, I'm going to have to do. I will limit the time to 3 minutes, but I will need someone to motion to extend the time 15 minutes to 45 minutes total to give all 15 3 minutes.
I make a motion, President Thomas.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Okay. We need to vote to add that to the consent, and I'll have roll call done
Kate,
again. Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, I need a motion for the approval of the proposed agenda.
So moved.
A second.
Jim and Deb. Roll call?
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Michael.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, we do not have sharing the success for tonight, so we are going straight to persons wishing to address the board.
Madam
Again,
President, how
Yes,
about
go
the Pledge
ahead.
of Allegiance?
Do you want to make a motion to add that?
Oh, it wasn't added on there?
No,
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance, I make a motion.
A
second. All right, we will do that right here. A roll call?
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
No.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Michael,
No.
3-3.
It fails for lack of a majority. All right, so we are on to persons wishing to address the school board. 3 minutes each. Keep your thoughts and your comments civil. I don't have the whole thing in front of me, but any complaints that directly name a person or a school, please go through the proper channels with that. And I have Mary Hahn up first. Shirley, will you do your magic?
I am trying to, but it won't take her. There she should be. There she's coming.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Mary Hahn. It's MaryHaan. I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. I just wanted to address the board briefly and talk about some of the items that are up on the agenda tonight pertaining to library collections and the policies and procedures that are currently in effect and are proposed to go into effect regarding challenges or contested items within the library collections in the schools. It's troubling to me to imagine that a citizen of Rapid City can remove an item from circulation for such an extended period of time simply by extending the review process through all of the multiple levels. I was trying to add up the amount of time that it would take for an item to be returned to circulation if a citizen decided to pursue all the levels of review process. And it seems that it would be out of circulation for up to 96 days, which is over half of our school year. As a parent of 2 young children, having access to reading materials and educational resources, both at the public library and in our home library and in the public school system, is incredibly important to me. Reading is something that has been a huge part of my life, and I encourage that in my children every day. And the idea that someone, whether or not they have children even in the district, could take reading access away from my children is frightening to me. I'm also very troubled by the removal of the board's policies, which referenced the freedom to read statement and the Library Bill of Rights. These statements and the Library Bill of Rights were created in response to Nazi book burnings and in response to censorship at a time of extreme intolerance in our country and in the world's history. And removing reference and links to those statements is very troubling to me as well. I would like the board to consider tabling this new policy that you've drafted until a later period when it can be revised to truly reflect the values of our community when it comes to access to education, access to resources for our children, and the interests of our students as they learn and grow in our public schools. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Kyle Kraus.
Oh, I can't see myself. I'm hoping you can.
No, but we can hear you.
Okay, well, close enough. I'm also commenting regarding the library policy. Looks like I might be able to join.
Are you still there? Looks like you're muted now.
There we go. Yes, I think Shirley was able to join me as a panelist. So regarding the library policy, obviously you need something. I think it should be separate from the curriculum policy. What you've got proposed has what's hopefully the unintended consequence of allowing one person to remove a book from circulation and availability for the entire student body. I don't think that's something that should happen. Tons and tons. If you can name a book, it's probably been challenged at some point by somebody. I went on, you go on Wikipedia to the 100 most challenged books. There's stuff like Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter series, and religious texts like the Bible get challenged. And there's the Goosebumps series I read a bunch of in elementary, and books that are actually on my 7-year-old's bookshelf have been challenged. So you can't allow the most extreme elements in our community to make a book unavailable to everyone else. Some simple things you can do to fix that, one would be to leave the book in circulation while it's under review. That'd be the easy one. The other would be, give parents the power to decide these things. Take the book and put it in a special section and have the parent, if a parent signs off on something saying, yep, my kid can go look at books that are in this special section, then they can do that. Put the power in the parents' hands, and that's a pretty easy way to solve things. Some other things you might consider, the burden on our staff. If someone walks in with a list they found on the internet of 50 books they want banned, would be astronomical. You think of one person challenges the Bible, and then your librarians have to read the whole thing during part of the review process. That can take a long time. So I'd say make sure parents have the power for their kids to access materials if they want them. And two, make sure you don't create something that's going to just create a nightmare for your school staff who has to engage in this review process. So I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker is Florence Thompson.
Okay. Well, I put on makeup. I don't know if you can see me, but golly, I did it anyway. My name is Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education. And I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years experience in the schools as a psychologist. And I'm also a grandmother of a public school student. A couple of things. Number one, I'm still hoping to hear from the proponents of the proposed school social studies standards presented to the school board and the community. I think it's only fair to give the proponents a hearing. Okay, number two, talking about the policies of the books and materials. We need a complete review of the books and materials policy. The public, and particularly the parents, deserve more transparency. Lists of materials considered for purchase should be publicly listed well in advance so the public has time to review. Last time I said something about we need to get downstream. What I meant with we need to get upstream of the book process so that the board and there's a proper review of materials before they're purchased, and that would save everybody a lot of trouble. Let's see. Conforming to lists provided by the American Library Association, which has been completely taken over by the political leftists, and the list provided by booksellers, etc., should be no excuse to bring illegal pornographic materials into the school. I'd like to propose revamping the policy with the following amendment that you might consider in District Code, I guess it's IIAC, Roman numeral 2, criteria for selection of resources, letter D. It now reads, the value of a work should be considered as a whole and given greater weight than individual words, phrases, or passages contained in the work, period. I believe this section should be amended to include this statement. This section should not be construed to allow works which contain pornographic material as defined and prohibited to minors by the South Dakota state law. Neither should such pornographic materials be provided by the school to the few students who are over age 18, as distribution of such materials into the school milieu carries a high risk of exposure to minors. And I will send a copy of this in an email to the board. So I think it would be something to consider when you are reworking your policy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Our next speaker is Sean Bradley.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Again, my name is Sean Bradley. I'm here tonight as a parent and lifelong member of the community to stand in opposition to the new proposed library policy. I'm a parent of two elementary age children, both of whom are voracious readers. They have had their love of reading instilled in them by their mother, a speech language pathologist, and me, a language arts teacher. You know who else has fostered their love of learning? every single one of the immensely qualified, extremely professional, and profoundly passionate teachers and librarians who have directly impacted their lives. They are the ones who have helped guide my son and daughter to books that are developmentally appropriate and continue to build and develop their love of reading. Now here we have a small group of very vocal opponents, many of whom don't even have kids in the schools, people who are taking their guidance from national organizations, who are trying to ban books from our kids' classrooms and school libraries. They are attempting to substitute their judgment for that of highly educated professionals, professionals who are well-versed in latest pedagogy and best practices, professionals who have spent years, sometimes decades, helping children learn to read and to love reading. Moreover, this group thinks they have the right to substitute their judgment for mine as a parent. They think they have the right to say what books my children can and cannot read. I would rather that be left up to the dedicated professionals in the schools who know best how to motivate my children and how to keep them loving reading. You don't get to substitute your judgment for mine as a parent. You don't get to step into my family and tell me what my children can and cannot read. Their mother and I will make that decision. To the board, I say, I've watched over the last decade as the board and senior leadership have continued to bow to a very small, very vocal group of rabble-rousers who see fit to turn the schools into the latest front in the culture wars. The district has made a habit of caving to this vocal minority, of creating policy to punish the many because of the few. To you, I say this needs to stop. If you approve the revision of policy IIAC as currently worded, remove policy IIAD-E4, remove books from circulation while under review, and remove student perspectives from the review process, you are allowing this group of extremists to continue to determine policy in this district. You are allowing them to silence teachers and staff who are afraid to stand up on record and call them out. I beg you, for my children, for all of the children in the district, stand up to these people, stand up for your staff and your students, put this culture war garbage to bed, and table this policy as currently proposed.
That's time, Sean. Thank you. And we have Kara Flynn next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. This is Kara Flynn, K-A-R-A, F as in Frank, L-Y-N-N. I'm speaking this evening as a parent and an active volunteer in the district. And I'm going to make two main points about the library policies. One, the first policies I want to talk about is that there's already a plan in place to deal with these types of issues. For 4 years, I volunteered weekly in the Southwest Middle School library. I covered the librarian's lunch, so I performed her duties during that time period. And during that time period, I learned that there were certain children that were not allowed to check out certain books, and certain children that could not check out what they are called YA or young adult books. And these books were also kept in the library in a separate section, and they were monitored. So parents just needed to be proactive, and they just needed to let the librarians know which books their children could check out. And that's how I think this should remain. I want qualified professionals making decisions about which books should be in the library and not other parents. Now, I still want those parents to have the ability to remove those certain books from their child's ability to check out. But I think if you want to remove a book, you need to have read it. You need to go in and state that your child shall not check that book out. Other parents should not be making this decision for the remainder of the students. We need to rely on qualified professionals. And the second point I'd like to make is this new policy puts undue burden on current staff. At a time period where we are really having trouble retaining teachers, you are putting lots of review committees in, you are making it unlimited the number of books that can be challenged, and you are making them automatically pull the books from the shelves. So what is going to occur here is there's going to be another workload put on the librarians. The librarians already have an additional workload that they're not supposed to have, because when we went to one-on-one computers, we did not hire any new IT people in the schools. So the ones that I know have to check in and check out computers, and they're essentially the IT people for their schools. They are already completely overworked. I would think that you need to consider how staff will be able to respond to this.
That's time. Next speaker is Tonchi Weaver.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, board. I'm just going to have some brief comments, but it's interesting to listen to some of the previous speakers. They're actually arguing for what they're against. They're against someone telling parents what things their kids will read. And by placing materials in the school library, that is permission for kids to read anything that's there. I will point out that one of the previous speakers did say that, well, more than one actually, that the parents will decide, not the extremist activists or whatever the terminology was. And they've demonstrated that the parents are already in charge of what their children read, because even if books aren't available in the library, they're available in bookstores, they're available online. Parents can supply materials that they think their children should read. And the school, on the other hand, by having books in their library, are giving a certain moral authority to the material that's there. A brief review of the statutes in chapter 22-4 list a lot of definitions of terms that would be applied to some of these materials, specifically obscene material, prurient interest, and there are descriptions and prohibitions. Also, there are responsibilities there. And I found it interesting that there is a statute that that offers an affirmative defense. And one of those, and that means that if someone gives these kinds of materials to children, one of the positive or the affirmative defenses is that the defendant is an employee of a school or a library, and that the material in question is serving the educational purposes of the organization. Well, if we need to know what the educational purposes of K through 12 are, they're spelled out in Article 8, Section 1 of the South Dakota Constitution, and that is to produce a moral and intelligent people. So with that in mind, no one is more qualified to guide the moral upbringing of their children than the parents. So I think that your policy to remove materials that are subject—
That's time. That is time. Thank you. Rocky Atkinson?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Again, my name is Raquel Atkinson, but I go by Rocky. Tonight, I've been given permission to share some thoughts that are not uniquely mine, but that I share and feel very passionate about. I'd like to highlight some of the problems with the policy as presently written in the agenda, of course, regarding these library materials and the complaint process. This is potentially a 5-stage process that could be very time-consuming, especially if a significant number of books are challenged. Taking the book out of circulation during review and allowing multiple books to be challenged multiple times could result in literally one person being able to remove books from circulation for everyone indefinitely. Now, this doesn't just apply to highly questionable materials, okay? One person doesn't like any religious texts, such as the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, gone. It's gone. One person doesn't like the Harry Potter series because it encourages witchcraft, gone. Someone doesn't like the adventures of Tom Sawyer because of dated racial language, gone. Someone doesn't like the Diary of Anne Frank because of its discussion of teenage sexuality, gone. Someone doesn't like almost any Stephen King book because of mature content, gone. Someone doesn't like Ender's Game, The Giver, Gone with the Wind, The Grapes of Wrath, James and the Giant Peach, The Jungle, Lord of the Rings, Of Mice and Men, The Outsiders, Sophie's Choice, To Kill a Mockingbird, Twilight, and even Where's Waldo. For any number of reasons, they're gone. Gone. Every single book that I've mentioned in this list has been challenged at some point. Every single one. I think it's only reasonable for you to amend this policy to state that not only will the book be left in circulation pending review, but that the burden of proof lies with the objecting party. You cannot expect this burden to be placed on an administrator, a librarian, a teacher, or any other staff member currently working. It's not in their contract. I see no mention of adding staff for literacy review boards. And if a parent truly objects to something that their child is being exposed to, shouldn't they be able to tell us exactly what that is? That seems super logical to me. I'm very involved in my child's education, but I don't object to her being exposed to opposing views because it opens a dialogue for us to have a conversation about what our
That's time.
are.
Thank you. Next speaker, Garrett Pfeiffer.
Thank you. Yes, you did.
Okay, great. We can hear you.
Thank you all for your time and energy and your willingness to listen to all of us. I represent a group of 80 and growing, largely parents, I'm grandparents, as well as 1 to 2 students for every one of those parents in the RCAS system on average. So it's a bit of a chunk of our system and a small, tiny chunk of our community. But personally, I'll admit it was easy to become disenfranchised in regard to the school system I happily send my kids to. And that was an error of sloth on my part. And I think several in our group would agree. As I've made an effort to learn about the combined difficulty and privilege of your job and the various challenges and growth opportunities facing our school system, I've been pleasantly surprised by the call to caring you've all signed up for. But I've been equally and unpleasantly surprised, to no fault of your own, at the political gamesmanship that enters this room. Normally it's the room. The extreme politics, both right and left wing, are fueled by humans, us, as we unconsciously become what we consume. We spend too much time online in special interest groups or watching real-time partisan news, lending us a poor understanding of history and our founding principles. We say experience and learning from mistakes are great teachers, but then hide it and neglect the hard-won experiences of the people who came before us and did us the service of writing that all down. Instead, little by little, we adopt the thoughts and feelings, the attitudes and standards of the information we filter in and the people or groups we surround ourselves with. The changes are too gradual to notice until they're too large to address. And unfortunately, I think we need to address them now because, in my opinion, from social studies curriculum to banning of books, we've started using school boards and teachers and staff and students as weapons in that effort. To you all and to the teachers and students and staff, I say I'm sorry, and I hope collectively we are sorry. Rather than continue that trend locally and rather than rely on rumors that generally serve only to confirm one's bias, let's step into classrooms here in Rapid City, South Dakota. I had the great pleasure of talking to Jim recently, not about books or politics, but rather school infrastructure, and he reminded me of something very important. In his public service role, he stepped into our school buildings and saw them, felt them, smelled them, and learned from the folks within them. That's what we have to do rather than make decisions from afar, from the perspective of a special interest group or behind a screen. In doing so, perhaps we find things to address, including curriculum and books. But we can only do that in a thoughtful fashion if we actually know the local reality and come from a place of open-minded curiosity. I don't really think books are our problem. We have 10-year-olds overdosing on fentanyl, but either way, Hiding age-appropriate information generally doesn't help us learn and grow, and tends to make us narrow-minded and fearful. As Jodi Picoult noted, there is absolutely nothing wrong with a parent deciding a certain book is not right for her child, but there is a colossal problem with the parent deciding that, therefore, no child should be allowed to read that book. I would add, in a time of misinformation and disinformation, this is me now, we shouldn't insulate our kids from uncomfortable ideas. Let's be their guide in their exposure and encourage them to engage with that discomfort, to challenge assumptions and biases.
That's time.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next speaker is Amber Steiner.
You got it right.
Thank you. Good. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Steiner. I'm the mom of a West Middle School student and a current senior at Stevens, as well as a senior in college out of state who also attended Stevens. My kids have been blessed here in this community for the last several years. We came in 2014 after my husband retired from the military, and they had attended schools literally all over the world during that time. So we have had a multitude of experiences in a multitude of districts and cultures as well. And I would like to say that I feel Rapid is probably one of the best districts they've ever been in and has prepared them well for college, which is also why I have concerns about this new library policy that we have. My kids are voracious readers, and we have always talked as a family about appropriate books and utilized teachers and their suggestions, and there's never been a problem. If there are problems, in every district that I've ever been in, we have been able to speak to the teachers, to speak to other staff, and those have been addressed at the classroom level, which I think is completely appropriate, which is something the current policy does. I am not sure who thought that the current policy was poor and needed completely disseminated or taken apart, but I have several concerns that many of the other speakers already addressed. One of the concerns that no one else has said is in that review process, currently it says a high school student is a part of that process, and I think that's a great thing to have, but the edit takes that student out of it. If you want to know what is going on in your schools, then you should have a student who is able to review that with them and give their perspective. It's important that they have a voice and feel like they are heard. You have students that come and speak to your school board and give reviews of what's going on in their schools all the time, and I think that's great. Also, as a side, Blackhawk recently, you showed it on your Facebook page, did a great interactive learning activity with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book. Under this, that book could go away. Though that entire lesson that those teachers did and made that whole week so amazing for those students, gone, because one parent can say, I don't like that book. And for how long? Like it said before, it doesn't limit how many times the book is challenged. It doesn't limit how many books one person can challenge. I could walk in, if you pass that, if you pass this amendment or this change to policy, I could walk into my daughter's school and say, I disagree with every book in this library. That's not okay. It places undue burden on staff. It places undue burden on teachers. It ties teachers' hands with curriculum. And I think our teachers do an excellent job of knowing.
That's time, Mrs.
Thank
Steiner.
you.
Yep, thank you. Next speaker, Carolyn Hofer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I more wanted to talk about the ALA. The district code IIACP follows the ALA's Bill of Rights policy. It's the same ALA who fought against the Children Internet Protection Act of 2001. They took it to the Supreme Court. They claimed that it was a, quote, violation of freedom of speech to put filters on their computers to prevent children from accessing pornography. In 2022, the Follett software program was going to implement a feature that would allow parents to block sexual content from their kids only. The ALA bullied that company, and the feature does not exist because of them. They did not want parents to have the ability to block pornographic books from their own children. The ALA elected a self-proclaimed, quote, lesbian Marxist who wants sexuality taught in every classroom. She retweets her support for the Marxist Institute, Drag Queen Story Hour, and books depicting sex acts for children. The ALA tweeted out their support for providing the book Gender Queer to kids and later deleted it. It's got a picture with a woman wearing a strap-on dildo, having another woman perform oral sex on it. The other pictures show two boys naked in sexual positions and one masturbating and rubbing his crotch while driving. This is who the ALA is. As long as the ALA continues to defend and supply pornography to kids, our district should sever its relationship with them. And if we had a no porn policy like the ones that students have to follow, then this wouldn't be an issue. But the burden to get pornographic materials out of the schools should not be placed on the parents because it shouldn't have been there at all. And by the way, it's a 6-level process where it ends up in the district court. But there must be standards and accountability and transparency because right now, none of it exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Donna Robinson.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to speak in opposition to this book review process. It would seem that this book review process starts with the idea that the books are guilty until proven innocent. And that I think is a strange way to look at things. The review process, I think, sounds like it will be extremely cumbersome and time consuming, adding duties and time. And the idea of thinking that you can schedule a teacher, an administrator, a high school student, a parent, all at the same time in itself is very, very time consuming. And then having them agree on something. I haven't heard anything about what sort of matrix would be used. Is this all just personal opinion? Is this all just who can speak to who and persuade them? Or is there some sort of matrix that would provide a fair process for this review? And the last thing I would like to say is, this seems like a solution looking for a problem. This problem can be easily solved. Any parent can go into any library and require that their student be placed on a list that the librarian is well aware that any book that student wants to check out must be first approved by the parent. And that way, that parent can, if they are on that list and they want to be extremely watchful of what books are checked out, fine. That parent will be notified. That parent has to come in and give their personal approval in some manner that that book can be checked out by their student. Otherwise, the student cannot check it out. That leaves the book on the shelf. That leaves the book available to all other students. And that sounds to me like a pretty reasonable way of allowing each parent to parent in their preference. So those are my thoughts on the book review. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lynn Arnold.
Yes, my name is Lynn Arnold, Lynnarnold. I am a parent of a young elementary student, and I am also a 4th grade teacher. So I am very concerned that any community member can complain about a book and it is immediately removed from circulation. What right does that individual have to infringe upon the rights of my child, my students, and everyone else in that school or district? This is not right. In my 30-year teaching career, I have never had a parent approach me about a book they did not want their child reading. However, should they have that conversation, I would see to it that their request was honored. I have had books on banned lists that I don't dare mention right now that have helped reluctant readers form a passion for reading. A kid who didn't read says, "Miss Earl, can we have silent reading time today? I have this book." I about fell over. I've had them help them books that are on banned lists deal with grief and handle trauma. It is not right to take these titles away because one person complains. Our library media specialists work really hard to get engaging, quality texts for students to read. So we have an age-appropriate books that instill a love of reading and help us produce proficient readers. This is a goal for everyone in our district. It is necessary for life. The other concern I have is the cumbersome process of review. You encourage something like open forum, yet you allow the complainant to speak on the issue for 10 minutes per book, an unlimited amount of books. Oh my gosh, I'm a teacher, guys. There is so much going on in schools that we need to address, and book police is not one of them. This is highly skewed in the favor of the person who is complaining. One person. Our democracy focuses on innocent until proven guilty. And just like Donna said, I have had that same thought. This policy needs to be revised to ensure the good of the community comes before one individual who complains. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Next speaker is Ben Sherman.
Hello. Yes, my name is Ben Sherman. I've been part of this community rep seat for 13 years now. It's a great place. And I'd like to speak in opposition towards the library procedures that are proposed, specifically the ones that are allow people to challenge books and have them removed from the shelves. Everybody has different opinions of what's appropriate and everything. Like some other people have said, to please everyone, you could essentially end up with no books on the shelves. And we don't want that. And the responsibility here is, like other people have said, is to follow the parents, talking to the teachers of the library, and working with the system that's already there. The burden for the school would be, the staff would be huge and unmanageable. So, and then this is just promoting division within our community by allowing this to by passing this thing. People will be upset that books got banned. And we want to have peace in our community. I concede my time, and thank you for hearing me. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, and our last speaker is Charity Day.
Hi, my name is Charity Day, and I would like to speak in opposition of the library procedures. I'm the mother of a second grader at Pinedale Elementary, and
oh, you muted.
Hear me?
Yep, there you go.
During 2020, we were told that we were trusted to make the right decisions for ourselves and our family. We were given the decision to keep our children in the schools or bring them home and learn remotely. We were given the decision to vaccinate our children or not vaccinate them. We were given the choices to teach them at home the curriculum. And now we are losing control of those rights in which we were given and told that we had that trust, and we are now given this document, and for some reason that trust is no longer there. Not in its entirety, but first it slips away. And if you read the IIADE4, the first document, which is being asked to be deleted in its whole, after being told that we need to make the decisions that are best for our children, the decisions about what resources are suitable for particular children should be made by the people who know them best, their parents or guardians, is a document that when we want to exclude from the policy in itself. That's a statement to me that we want to go against
what was told to us in 2020? Why is it that we want to go against the liberties that we were told that we had? If we start now, where does it end? So I concede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are now, on to board responses to open forums. Please put your hand up if you would like to respond. All right, Jamie Clapham. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say I won't say really quickly, but I would like to thank everybody who took time to log on and speak. I think it's encouraging to me to see a broad swath of our community be involved and care about our kids. I think I would echo that when we review and adopt policies as a board member, I want to make sure that they are thorough and there are parameters. And I think that we have to be cautious when we don't look at those, or we don't include those parameters, as well as things that are important about policy are the people who affect them the most. And I'm not sure that we've really addressed our library staff in developing this policy. If we have, it's something that I'm not aware of, but I think that, policies affect students, library staff, school staff, and I think we need to very much address how a policy change would impact them. So I would just say that a lot of the concerns that were presented, I do echo and understand, and think that while obviously we already have a policy in place, but that reviewing and making sure it's done right is important as opposed to rushing something.
Michael Berkland.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm sure we're going to get into them here. But just like last time, I do want to point out the pornography accusations. I looked up the harmful to minors statute, and it does say predominantly appeals to the prurient, shameful, or morbid interest of minors, and is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for minors. And this is the key part, is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So that is the part where when we're making these accusations of pornography, which are having an effect on our staff, that we really need to make sure that it does not. Many of these books that we're talking about are award-winning. They are sold at bookstores all across the nation. They're in schools all across the nation. And so I just want to address that. Yes, they may be inappropriate. Yes, they may be graphic, but I do want to address the fact that I have not seen the proof that these are pornographic. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands up. So on to conflict of interest, and nobody has turned in a waiver. So we are now on to the approval of the proposed consent agenda. Does anybody want anything pulled?
Yes.
Please put your hand up. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Yes, I'm just reading to make sure I'm pulling it correctly. Yes, I would like to pull items A, B, C, D, E, F, and G from the consent agenda.
And are you sure about that? Because there are a couple of these that just have a minor change. And I don't mean the one for the procedure. There are some that are just literally the word "the" inserted and instructional material taken out.
And I would say yes, just because I think when they are all approved or not approved, I think they all need to be uniform and consistent. So I think it makes the most sense. I think the same reason they were proposed together, I think they need to stay together.
Okay. All right. So I need a motion and a second to approve the proposed consent agenda having A through G removed. Any others? Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Jim, second?
Second.
Deb, second? All right.
Yes.
All right, all those in favor of approving the proposed consent agenda with A through G having been removed?
Kate,
Roll call, yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, we are going to take these all together in a group, and then so I need a motion from for A through G to approve.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Was that Troy?
and now
Thank you,
Okay.
Troy.
we have a motion and a second, but we are going to discuss them. So go ahead and raise your hand on who wants to discuss these first. All right, Jamie Clapham.
I just think it's wise. I think we have issues with access, even to Zoom and internet. There are people that it's down, it's spring break. Our educators aren't available to be here to discuss. I think, you know, we proposed at the first reading, and it was discussed and said there, yes, the idea of like an opt-in section of the library is a good idea, but none of that has been addressed, amended, any of that. And so we talked about it kind of as if it was possibly going to happen, but now we're on second reading and it's not. So I think that, you know, and on top of that, we all know multiple board members have received, you know, emails, communication regarding books and policy, yet no one's used the policy that even currently exists. So I'm not really sure, like, we're addressing this policy A through G, and I'm not saying like policies don't need to be updated and that sort of thing, but I think that this isn't an urgent matter. Like, if we don't pass and change these policies exactly as they're written with every word tonight, like, the world's not going to end, our students aren't going to suffer, our staff isn't going to suffer. Like, I don't think we need to rush to something that could be better. I think as a board, we want to do our best, and we want to do our best by our staff and our students as a whole, and the community as a whole. And I don't think passing these would be doing our best. I think it would be rushed, and I don't think it would be our due diligence.
Okay, thank you. Bishop Carr.
Okay. I have several questions, so I don't know who from the administration to address. I guess, Mike, would that be, Mr. Talley, would that be you as far as representing this policy?
I think actually Val could maybe answer some of the questions as well.
Okay.
So she's
All right.
on.
Well, let me
she's on
just throw them
standby.
out there, and whoever has the best qualified to answer it, do that. Am I assuming that this policy came up, and just for everybody's, the administration has just been doing an overall review of all policies just to make sure that they're up to date, that any language differences could be addressed. So am I assuming that that's how this library policy came up, in just a general review of all policies?
That's correct. I'll talk, Mike, since I have my mic on. Yes, Mr. Talley and I have been conducting a review of many of the I policies throughout the school year. This was the last one that was reviewed. The policy committee is represented by just building administration at all three levels, and Mr. Talley and myself. And then, of course, we bring any recommended changes to DDL, or district leaders, and board policy leadership.
Okay, so I say that to make a point that outside of this review, the policy was in place and there was no argument, nobody brought it up. So had it not been up for review, it would have stayed where it always had been, without anybody making a complaint or a fuss or anything about it. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, you never know when we're going to get one. For the record, I went back and looked at the last time a book was challenged, and it was at Grandview Elementary, and it was decades and decades ago.
And so that's my other thing I was going to ask. There's a lot of opposition and a lot of worry and angst about the policy, and it's not going to work, and it's going to be time consuming. but we've never went through the policy. There's never been a formal complaint. And I'm getting emails from people who books shouldn't be in, books shouldn't be out, but they're not following the current policy by filing a complaint. And to me, if a person was serious about a concern about a book and there is a policy that addresses that complaint, that they would go through the process. And so can I assume at this point, there is currently no formal complaint to remove a book from any library in the Rapid City area school?
To my knowledge, no, the complaint launches at the building level, so I can't be definitive, but to my knowledge, there's no complaint.
Okay, so for me, I would pay more attention if somebody had actually filed a formal complaint, and one speaker said it would take 96 days, according to her calculation, but we don't have any factual evidence that it would take that long. We don't have any factual evidence that the policy doesn't work because nobody has filed an official complaint to allow the policy to go through its steps to then say, okay, it works, this part doesn't work, the whole thing needs to be scrapped. And so and for me, until that happens, I'm going to support the current policy until somebody can factually and evidentially say this policy doesn't work, or it does. We may find out that it does work. So okay, were there any? The board had made some recommendations. Well, there were some board members that made some recommendations to the policy about sectioning off books, not taking them out of circulation. Were any of those recommendations taken into account and changed in the policy?
I can answer that first. Part of what the discussion in policy committee that the administration brought to us saying, look, this is time consuming. The changes that were made were mechanical, really. Some people have mentioned that these are the Bill of Rights have been taken out. They haven't. They've been rearranged into a new paragraph, and all they would need to do is keep reading through what was lined out. But also, it was mentioned at the last meeting by myself that we are going to work on a more comprehensive with librarians, with community members, parents, in a different kind of setting, which is a different committee, in order to make that process that, I don't know if it was 96 days or not, but and some of that isn't set in stone. You can have a building level that library, the first level is the librarian, and then second one is the building, third, I think, is administration, and it goes on up to the board. But all those levels don't necessarily have to take 7 days, but the policy as written is cumbersome. It's cumbersome for the staff. It's cumbersome for the individual that would have brought the complaint. That needs a much more comprehensive, long talk. This was just brought forward, like Val said, very quickly to make some language changes that an update, but that we do plan on making that rubrics better, more friendly, more efficient for staff and for the community. But again, that is coming, but we need more time for a couple of different meetings for that.
Okay,
Val?
so if that's the case, then to me, it doesn't make sense, or it would be a better use of time to table this discussion, not have two votes, a vote to make the minor changes, and then another vote later on to vote on the rehaul. Why don't we just table it? If the minor revisions aren't necessary to the operation of the policy, we can just table it, do everything that you just said, and then bring it back to the board where there have been the major revisions and the minor revisions, and then go from there.
Well, I think part of that is because it's not just this, but then that committee can also help with the curriculum as well. That matrix needed, that Val was saying needs to be in place, that we were talking about, having that flagged area, for some of these books that are coming in, that when English teachers go to look at different book lists, bundles together, there's another matrix for that as that comes in, and that can be part of this too. So I'm saying it's a little more complex than just, let's just get these updated, and then start on that through the rest of the school year and during the summer. Val, would you have any comment for him?
I agree with everything that's been said from both of you. Yes, it is true that there has been discussion about how to take that young adult list or that concept of a restricted area and define it better in all 23 schools and have a process for which students would be identified as free access to the library or not free access to the library. Those discussions were held with a small group of librarians representing all three areas, but not all the librarians. Nor did all the librarians look at the policy. That hasn't been our past practice. And so I guess, Bishop Carr, I hear what you're saying about you could just table the whole thing and not do anything until you have it the way you want it. That is absolutely true. And we could also push it through tonight and then continue the work. And that, like Kate is saying, there's a lot that still remains to be done in a committee that will have to be formed. And so, yeah, I think both answers are right. I know the work's not done, I guess is what I would say. Kate, would you agree with that?
I would say that, yes. And also tabling it for just this tabling in the parliamentary procedure is a little bit more complicated than just, hey, we'll put it back on the next meeting. We'd have to go to another vote to then vote to put it back on. It couldn't go on that meeting. It's a little bit more cumbersome to table it.
So whatever you term it, if it's not, I'm probably going to vote against it now because it's not, in my mind, ready to be presented to me for a vote. To vote on minor changes when we already are acknowledging that there are major issues with it doesn't, in my mind, make any sense when you can just not vote on it now, or if there's enough votes to vote no and do it later. My fear in voting yes and then saying it needs changes is what usually happens in a big bureaucracy, that it never is going to happen again. The fire is going to die down of the excitement that we have now, and there's not going to be any changes. So that's my fear of doing part now and then saying we're going to do something later. That really happened. So I guess that's my big thing. Number one is that we're making assumptions about a policy that hasn't been allowed to run its course to then evaluate whether it is a good policy or not good policy or whatever. So that's my right now comments. I think I'll have more, but I'll let somebody else speak.
Okay, Michael Brooklyn.
Thank you. First off, I would argue that this is a major change. Pulling the books right away versus keeping them in is going to have a very different effect as to what we're doing now and what we would start doing, I'm assuming tomorrow. I don't know when exactly these go into effect. So I guess I would argue that is a major change. What Bishop Carr mentioned is one of my also big concerns is I don't want to vote on something that is going to be changed later. When I'm voting on something, I want to have it in front of me so I know what I'm signing up for. And I just wanted to address a couple things from last meeting as well. First off, the 90 days thing, I roughly added it up. I didn't do it exactly, but I also got around 90 days. And like you said, it could be fewer, but still it's probably going to take a few weeks. But that's per book. And we're hearing a lot about these same 10, 12 books that we're getting in all of our emails. And if it was just those 10 books, I wouldn't be as concerned. But realistically, it's more than that. And I absolutely understand the concern with some of those books. One of those books on that list, I know a lot of people think that I'm way crazy, but there was one that I personally would not want to see in our libraries. But I don't think that I'm the one who gets to make that decision, because what I don't agree with does not mean that everyone should have to agree with, clearly. So I just have concerns about that. Like, I do understand. And when I was saying one F word, I wasn't saying that those books don't have way more than that. I absolutely do understand that those books have some pretty vulgar language in them. What I was saying was, as many of them stated tonight, it could be one F word. It could be because it talks about anything and everything. And as one person kind of noted, this isn't something we can uphold. Our staff doesn't have the power or the manpower to do this. We don't. I don't know about you guys. I can't read 200 books if they get challenged. I just don't have that kind of time, and I don't think any of us do. And so I also do not support this policy because, as many people noted, we have a policy now. Parents can make those requests. Let's see what happens with that, and then we can go from there and edit as needed.
Okay. Deb Baker, go ahead.
Parents have made requests to have the books pulled. And I know in one case where it went all the way, that nothing happened. It just kind of stalled off in a school and she was just put off. And it's not about an F word, by the way. It's about protecting our kids from pornography, period. And if we can pull the book for a short period of time to protect a kid that might not have somebody supervising and watching what they're reading, and something happened to them, and it brings back some really ugly stuff for them. I'm all we're asking for, I think, in this change is just to be able to pull the book for a short period of time while it's being reviewed. The review process, it takes a long time, but I think this is just crazy that we're not willing to protect our kids from pornography. That's what we're here for, is to protect our kids.
Bishop Carr?
So 2 things. So someone did follow the formal complaint policy,
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Okay, and it was resolved, was it situation
It was
resolved?
not resolved. And it really wasn't resolved. That was when was the other superintendent that was shoved underneath a rug.
Okay, well, that's not this administration.
No, it's
so-
not this administration, but it's the
Okay.
same policy that we're trying to fix, Troy.
Okay, so you said it got dropped, so then somebody is responsible for it being dropped. That's not the policy's fault. That's the administration, I guess, the previous administration. So again, this administration has not been able to follow through with this current policy. And let me respectfully say, let me ask the question. So does anybody on the board feel that our kids are unsafe right now at the current policy because of a book that may be on a library shelf? Is there a feeling that kids aren't being protected? And just because you said, Deb, that in my case, my opposition would mean that I'm not protecting kids.
I can tell you, Bishop Carr, I do not feel that way, no.
Well, I guess Deb just said, we need to protect our kids, and she's not understanding why we're not protecting our kids. So if I vote against this policy, then I would then feel, according to what Deb said, that I'm not protecting our kids.
Well, I know that book that we're talking about was checked out by somebody that should have never checked it out. That when, after we were told that that couldn't happen, it did. So.
Well, I
don't know.
I just have to quite say, I don't appreciate being labeled that way, that and I'm not okay. I'm gonna let it alone.
Okay. All right. Any more comments? Jim Hansen.
Thank you all for your comments. The reason why we're even here is because there are thousands of parents that aren't engaged We had 15 speakers out of 14,000 students. 15. I understand we probably could have had 30, but we never have 2,000-3,000 come to a board meeting. And to your point, Mr. Bishop Carr, yes, I do believe that unsafe or protecting the kids, there are hundreds of books that probably could be reviewed out of this. And there are books that shouldn't be there, difference of opinion. But if we're not going to protect the kids from that, when children get scarred, it carries on for life. And that's why I have a full-time job, due to a lot of things that have happened to kids that when they get to be adults, things are there. So I would say we need something. I agree with you that this should have been completely done and turned over, correctly done the first time. That is the biggest issue with the district, is they don't have it completely done. But then again, it's not the district's fault, because a brand new board's going to come in and they're going to nitpick it apart. And then the next one's going to come and they're going to keep changing. So I really hope that a committee gets started ASAP and addresses this issue. But for the moment, yeah, I'm going to vote yes, because I think there are books that need to be pulled. But at the end of the day, it's the parents' job to come forward and do that. And there is a policy for that. So we're playing a double-edged sword any way you go for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve of A through G. We will need a roll call, please.
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
I've got to abstain because, yeah,
abstain, you said?
yeah.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Michael,
No.
I have 3 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain.
So it does not pass. Okay. On to the next one. We have items for board information, the Scrubs Camp. Who's in charge of that?
Bobby Joe will speak to that.
Okay, great.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So this funding is requested. It's in cooperation with the State Department of Department of Health. We received this funding this year and we're able to host our first Scrubs Camp, specifically for Rapid City area school students. So this camp is very specific to students at Central Stevens and Rapid City High School, our Intro to Health Services classes. Otherwise, they would have to miss a completely different day of school to go and potentially not get into the camp. And so this year we were able to host over 180 students specifically for this camp from Central and Stevens and Rapid City High. And so this is just informational item to get approval to request those funds to continue to do this event in the future.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Any questions for her? All right. All right, on to the Director of Business report. If you have anything to report, please go ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
Gaffney.
Thank you, President Thomas. I will keep it real short and sweet for everybody on this snowy day. Obviously, springtime, a really busy time of year for the business and support service side of things. Everybody is, I'm sure, happy to have a week off for spring break. And if we were going to have a major spring blizzard, then this is the week for it. So hopefully this is the last one. really this time of year is very budget heavy work in terms of the business and support service side, really trying to form up the preliminary budget and move that piece forward. Obviously working through negotiations and trying to determine how negotiations is going to impact the budget. Working through the capital outlay process, trying to determine what projects are going to make it in for next year's capital outlay side of things. And then obviously the negotiations bleeds over to trying to determine what the overall capital outlay picture looks like as well. So some pretty complex pieces, and this is always a really busy time of year in terms of trying to pull all that information together and get the preliminary budget at a stage where it's ready to be presented to the board. Also, prepping for the upcoming election. There's a lot of responsibility, a lot of things going on in terms of making sure all the pieces are in place to have the election go smoothly. I've been spending a lot of time at the South Middle School site. Really thankful for that team, Skull Construction, MOA architecture and engineering firm, really doing a great job with that project. Overall project is about 42% complete right now. And it's amazing. Yeah, it's going very well. It's
Good
amazing
job.
to
Yeah.
see how they can continue working even around some of these more inclement weather days, which I don't believe today was a good day for them, but typically they can find some really ingenious ways to continue working at that site, even when the weather isn't great. So I know we are working on getting the board out for a site walkthrough, hopefully this spring at some point, if the weather ever cooperates and the site ever dries up a bit. And I have some really cool pictures in terms of the progress over the last year there at the site. And I will get those out to the board and we'll get them posted on the support services site too, so that the public can take a look at those. But those are really the major things right now, President Thomas, and kept it short and sweet.
Okay, thank you very much. I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate it. Any questions for him? Okay. Now on to other. Does anybody have another? Michael Berkland.
Thank you. Funnily enough, today is National School Librarian Day. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our librarians, specifically because, as some of the other speakers mentioned, they have kind of become IT people as well. And especially at the middle schools, I've heard that they're taking on kind of a lot of stuff. And so I want to say I respect them for doing that. When I was even a kid, what a library was and what libraries are now, like many have mentioned, those IT, information, technology, they're doing lessons, they're doing all sorts of different things. And so I just want to give a shout out to them for National School Librarian Day.
And Jamie Clapham.
Forgot to unmute. So I just wanted a couple of quick things. I was able to go to the STEAM night at Canyon Lake. That was beautiful weather right before the snowstorm. So it was a really fun event. It was great to see so many families out, and they had some really cool STEAM activities. So wanted to give a shout out to them. They said it was a really cool event and great to see our families in our buildings. Though Mrs. Swigert, of course, is not here to hear this as she's enjoying the sun. I wanted to say thank you to her. She took time out of her busy schedule to be a celebrity reader for the second graders at Blackhawk. So I was really appreciative of that. And shout out to all of our library staff who works very hard, and a lot of times because we don't have librarian of the year and we don't, and a lot of times it's teacher appreciation, and some of those support staff that are super important and integral in our schools don't get the applause and pats on the back that they do deserve. And one final thing I kind of wanted to bring up, there's been some things, in the media and discussion about the health assistant situation. And I think it would serve our community well for us to maybe collaborate on getting some form of information from the board and the district about that situation and how the decisions were made and addressed. I think it could be beneficial to the community as a whole.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure. I may have misspoken on it passing or not, that earlier vote. There were, would you tell me the votes again, Shirley?
It was 3, 2, and abstain. And so with 6, majority would be 4.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Thank you. All right, now we are on to adjournment if there's no others.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
roll call.
Let me get to my right paper here. Sorry. Many papers. There we go. Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Thank you,
Motion
everybody.
carries.
Yep, thank you.
Stay warm.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Yes, happy Easter.